It's the black guy in the corner, but they'd rather see a on the corner. They say I'm stealing Nick's clips like I'm stealing Nick's chick, not knowing that I hit him first week for the lick. I said, Nick, I could post here while you post there. Let's run the ads up, then let's meet up over there.
Good evening, everybody. You're watching America First. My name is Nicholas J. Fuentes. We have a great show for you tonight. Very excited to be back here with you tonight on Wednesday. We have a lot to talk about tonight, lots to get into. Big show. Our featured story, we're talking all about the terror attack in Washington, D.C. by an Afghan refugee. I'm sure you've heard the news. Very tragic, very sad, but also very predictable. No surprises. Very sad, but not surprising at all. And I've been talking about this throughout the year. The violence, political violence, is just beginning. From the left against the right, from the left against law enforcement, maybe from law enforcement itself, from the intel agencies. And it's more confusing than ever. We don't even know where these attacks are coming from necessarily or why they happen, to what end. They could just as easily be what they appear to be, which is attacks from partisans against other partisans, or they could be psychological events intended to change the political dynamic. And we'll talk tonight all about it. Earlier today, 2 National Guard soldiers were shot in Washington, D.C., about a mile from the White House. A killer ambushed them, shot them in the head with a handgun. They are both in critical condition, although it was reported earlier falsely they had died. It appears that they are still alive, although severely wounded. The shooter was apprehended, and he is a 29-year-old Afghan who was brought into the United States under a particular program under President Biden after the withdrawal of U.S. forces from Afghanistan. And in particular, many of the Afghans that were brought here following the withdrawal in 2022 were collaborators with the U.S. military. Translators, soldiers, mercenaries, people that worked with U.S. soldiers and special forces. Afghan locals were brought into the United States, most likely to spare them from certain death or persecution under the Taliban. And this shooter was one of those people. 29 years old, Afghan, had been brought here under that program. Visa was approved earlier in the year. I believe the application was 24. He received it in 25, and he's been here. The family says he's loyal to the United States, but apparently not. Witnesses say he shouted Allahu Akbar before he shot the soldiers, but that's not confirmed. And we'll talk tonight all about it. There's 2 stories here. There's 2 angles. One story, which is sort of apparent, is that a Muslim refugee from the Middle East who shouldn't have been here came to the United States and shot Trump's soldiers because he hates our way of life, because he is a Muslim extremist. He harbors anti-American attitudes. That's one story. Another story is that a close collaborator with U.S. forces for 10 years, working hand in glove with the U.S. military, was rescued by the United States, brought to the nation's capital, and then attacked National Guard in D.C. The parents don't know why. They say he loved the United States. They said he worked with the United States for over a decade. What are we to make of this? Is this authentic? Is this Islamic fundamentalism? Or is this some sort of incident concerning former U.S. military personnel, which would raise a lot of questions about what exactly happened here? It's early to say. It only happened earlier in the evening, and we only just identified the suspect, or sources close to the DOJ did earlier today. And so we'll talk all about that tonight. That'll be our main story. Very tragic, very sad. The larger story, of course, is that this country is unraveling. And I predicted this, but this is not a crazy prediction. when Thomas Crooks shot Donald Trump, every psycho in the country noticed. And they saw the infamy, and they saw the potential. And when Luigi Mangione shot the CEO of United Healthcare, the way he was lionized, the way he was sexualized, every psycho, again, noticed, and they started devising their plans. They started scheming. And ever since then, we saw the assassination of Charlie Kirk, attacks on ICE, National Guard. Now this, it's only going to escalate. It's only going to get worse, and it could be organic and it could be fake. It could be fake to exacerbate organic violence. At a certain point, it takes on a life of its own. They light the fuse, and the whole thing blows up. So it's a scary time. Everybody be safe. Holiday season's coming up. Thanksgiving's tomorrow. Christmas soon after that. Got to be careful. Have to be vigilant because things are not as they seem. These are strange times. Drone attacks. I've been saying this. This is my next prediction. Screenshot this. We are going to see a drone-based terror attack on a mass gathering, I would imagine within the next 18 to 24 months. It's not hard to predict that. It's not hard to see that one coming. Russia's making 1.8 million drones per year. Ukraine is making millions of drones. It always happens like this. You think all those weapons are created? Some of them don't wind up in the hands of the wrong people? Can't control it. People aren't ready. So I think we're due for another very turbulent period of time in our political history. But if we're not already, but we'll talk all about that. We're also going to talk tonight about Marjorie Taylor Greene's epic crash out on a lighter note. Oh, yeah. You know, you guys, this is why we play. We shouldn't, but we shouldn't. It's not right, but this is really why we do it. This is what makes it so rewarding. We live for this. Do we live for this? Or do we live for this? This is why we get out of bed. This is why we brush our teeth. This is why we do it. This is why we go to work. It makes it all worth it. Marjorie Greene, never been a fan. Never been a fan of women in politics. Better yet, never been a fan of women in general. Pause. Never been a fan of women in politics. Never been a fan of a woman in Congress who's going to be the leader of the populist movement. Sorry, not my first choice. And me and Marjorie, we've had our feud. We've had our beef in the past. Tucker Carlson's given me a hard time. He says, why do you attack Marjorie? She's sincere. Okay, well, she's an idiot. So she could be sincere. She's an idiot. And we have problems. We've had problems. And just when I thought I was going to have to put that aside for the sake of the movement, I was going to have to get along with Marjorie Taylor Greene, she reminded me that I'm always right. She resigned from Congress last week, and everybody wondered why. They said, does she have this sophisticated political agenda? Does she have these ambitions for higher office? Is she running for governor? Is she running for president? She has surged to 6% chance of being the nominee on Polymarket. Stop the presses. Put a stop on the Marjorie Greene options and calls. No. She didn't resign because she wants to run for president. She resigned because it got too hard. Because the pressure got to be a little too much. Southern belle, early hominid, Georgian girl, can't play in the man's game? Can't play in politics? If you can't take the heat, maybe it's time to get back in the kitchen. Can't take the heat? Can't take the pressure? Maybe it's time to get back in the kitchen. Thanksgiving is upon us. Turkey, stuffing, mashed potatoes. Thanks. So Marjorie Greene, she's out. She left Congress. And like I said, everybody thought she was going to run for president. And it turns out she just quit because She freaked out, and she went on Twitter today, and she had an absolute typical female meltdown. Typical female meltdown. This is why you can't put women in politics. Thank you, Marjorie. I really should send her a thank you note. Thank you, Marjorie, for proving to everybody this is why you can't let women in politics, because they just cry. Because they just cry. When shit gets too hard, they just cry. And you can't cry in politics because we have to save our country. We need the police. We need the National Guard to break the backs of our enemies. And it turns out you can't cry. You can't just have an emotional crash out. You can't have an emotional bitch fest because you're upset. This is what happens. So Marjorie is on Twitter. Mike Cernovich, who I don't even like, left her a very innocent reply. He said, you know, you should have continued and served out your full term. You should have finished what you started. And Marjorie launches this big screed. She says, well, I should serve out my term. Why don't you run for Congress? That's what she says. You should get off your ass and run for Congress. I've been fighting so hard. She goes and she says, what do you want? You want me to die like Charlie Kirk? Is that what you want? You want me to get killed like Charlie Kirk? Are you kidding me? A congresswoman. To Mike Cernovich, all he said was, you know, you really should have finished out your full term. It's only 2 years. That's not a long time. 2 years? You're halfway through. Just, hey, run through the finish line. Run through the first baseline. He said, just finish. She goes, why? You want me to get killed? Why don't you get off your ass? Stop being a keyboard warrior and put the phone down and you run. Oh my gosh. Women in politics. And, you know, the only thing that I regret is that I wasn't with other people. I wasn't with the men, so we could all kind of share the knowing glance, like, get a load of this psycho crashing out. Get a load of the emotional meltdown. Oh, boy, here we go. That's the only regret. I was, like, in bed on Twitter. Then it gets better. She comes back for more. She can't help herself. She comes back for seconds. She's a glutton. She's a woman of consumption. She comes back for more. She quote tweets her own tweet, her own crash out on a different account. On her official Congresswoman account, the second account, and she says, I'll say this in the nicest way I can. F you. And then she launches into yet another tirade. This time directed at men specifically. She said, typical man, typical Republican man. You expect your dinner on the table, but I've been telling you that the trash hasn't been taken out and the dishes aren't clean. Then she closes it by saying, I'm going to tell you, Republican men, make your own dinner, asshole, and clean up when you're done. Okay? Represent the Congresswoman from Georgia. Representative Greene, this is a sitting congresswoman. She says, such a typical Republican man. Make your own dinner, ass, and clean up when you're done. It's like, oh my gosh. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thanks. Christmas came early, man. Black Friday came early. What a gift to us misogynists. What a gift. Thank you. A gift to the misogynistic men in your life. Classic example of why you can't have any women in politics. Love it. Thanks, Marge. Seriously. You are the gift that keeps on giving. We love it. I really appreciate it. So we'll talk all about that. Honestly, that's just fun. There's really nothing happening in the news today. We're just going to have fun with that one. I waited so long to see that. The games we have to play, we have to pretend to like these people. Hi, Representative Greene. Oh, love your hair. Love your white coat. Love your giant white parka when you're screaming at Biden like an idiot. Oh, love that. It's awesome. I love being represented by like a divorced blonde mom. Like, this is great. Anyway, so we'll get into it. Before we do, I want to remind you to smash the follow button, smash the like button, leave a comment. Let me know what you think about the show. Get your merch, Fuentes.store. We have credit cards now. We got the hats. We got the shirts. AmericaFirst.plus if you want to subscribe and become a Plus member, $15 a month, to get access to the whole archive of the show. $100 a month to get access to a group chat with me. Yeah, like I said, not too much happening in the news. It tends to slow down around the holidays. I will say, though, some very ominous developments in the Middle East. And I probably should have done at least one show before the holiday, but I'm sure I'll get to it next week. Two very ominous developments, which is one, ongoing crisis in Lebanon. About a year ago exactly, Israel strategically defeated Hezbollah with their series of pager and radio attacks, followed by waves of airstrikes and ground operations. They say that Hezbollah has been reconstituting itself, rearming itself. And so Israel and Washington have applied pressure to the Lebanese government, the actual government, to finish the job for them. They want to compel the Lebanese civilian government and the Lebanese military, the standing army, to disarm Hezbollah. Because Hezbollah is the largest or most well-equipped non-state military in the world, at least they were up until about a year ago. Israel and Washington are pressing the advantage, telling Lebanon, you need to make it illegal for Hezbollah to be armed to the teeth like this. You need to disarm them. Lebanese government has been dragging their feet. They won't do it. They don't want to confront Hezbollah. Hezbollah is protecting Lebanon. And so it has just been authorized, apparently. The United States has just authorized Israel to take matters into their own hands and to demilitarize Hezbollah themselves. So we might see some major operations in Lebanon very soon. Israel claims to have killed the leader of Hezbollah in strikes recently. They've been bombing Lebanon. The other development is that Israel, for the second night in a row, has been running what appear to be military drills inside of Iraq along the Iraq-Iran border. And they're not firing projectiles, they're not launching anything, but the Israeli Air Force has been flying what appear to be these military drills along the Iraqi border, seemingly to simulate potentially new strikes against Iran. And I've been telling you all year, I really believe that we have not seen the end of that. There was a piece in Foreign Policy magazine at the end of the summer. It said the timeline for a renewed Israeli offensive against Iran is probably going to come this fall that we're in right now. And the reason being is because the Israelis will upset the president if they renew airstrikes against Iran during the midterms. That will hurt Trump politically. They won't have as much leverage. It will upset him. So if they want to make a move against Iran before 2027, after the midterms are finished and the new Congress is seated, then they're going to have to do it now. They're going to have to do it in the fall. They're going to have to do it maybe before the end of the year. And so we are really at a high level of alert for a potential surprise attack by Israel against Iran. Now, at the same time, it could be the case that Israel is merely doing these things either A, to give Iran the impression that an attack is imminent, so they may negotiate, or more likely, option B, they are doing these things to provoke Iran into striking first. Because whoever launches the first strike will have the advantage. And the thing about Iran, its capabilities are its missiles, its missile launch platforms, underground missile making facilities. These are stationary targets. Israel knows where they are. And so if Israel launches the first strike, they will take out the comms, they will take out the radar, they will go in heavy and hard, they will destroy the ground-based missiles that Iran has been rebuilding. And so that means the missiles are use them or lose them. You either use them or you'll lose them in airstrikes against Israel. And if Israel has that first mover advantage, they could make it so that Iran cannot scramble its air force to defend Iran, and Israel's going to get a free shot. And so this time around, there has been some speculation that maybe Iran will strike first. If they feel that an Israeli preemptive strike is imminent, then Iran might preempt the preemptive strike. They might hit Israel first because they're going to lose the missiles anyway. So is that why they're flying these very obvious drills? Who knows? But so things are heating up again in the Middle East. And so it's just something to keep an eye on. Like I said, I wish I had spent a little more time on it this week, but who knows? We might see something interesting. Timing might be Thanksgiving for that to happen. I don't know that for a fact, but we'll see. Maybe we'll talk about it next week. But that's really the only other major thing that's happening. We covered the war in Ukraine yesterday. What's really funny, just briefly on this, then I promise we're going to get on into the news. So we covered the Ukraine negotiations last night. And we read through the 28-point plan by Trump, and we read through the latest on whether Ukraine is going to accept this new deal being pushed by Trump. And we talked about the dynamics of the conflict. And there was so much optimism about the deal. If you read the papers yesterday or the day before, they said, this is the one. It's being received well by Russia. And Ukraine and Washington are almost on the same page. They're just ironing out these final details. And then we get a statement today from the Russian foreign ministry, and they totally poured cold water all over this. The Russian foreign ministry, maybe a spokesperson for the Kremlin came out today and said, we don't even have it. We don't have the proposal, and we've seen what's in it. They say, and whatever's in there, it's going to require a lot of consideration, and there's items in there that they don't like. So this happens over and over again. I've witnessed it with Gaza. I've witnessed it with Ukraine. If you watch the show, you know that you can't just read the headlines, because the headlines will tell you every week and every month, peace is almost about to break out. They're going to have a summit. They're going to have a meeting. They finally agreed. And it never happens. And that happens in Gaza. It happens in Ukraine. And so I think I saw it early this morning. They came out and said, yeah, there's no deal. There's nothing like a deal at all. So Zelensky's blowing right past the deadline, doesn't even agree with the whole plan. The Russians haven't seen it. They apparently don't even like it. So I think it seems that peace is still not within range yet. But anyway, that's just a little news update on some of these other things. I do want to get into the Marjorie Greene meltdown because it's so amazing. And I'll just briefly read through it because it's so good. But first, we'll give you some background here. We covered this last week. On Friday, Marjorie Greene surprised the whole country. She goes on Twitter and she releases a video statement with a written transcription, and she announces that she is resigning from Congress, which is a huge surprise because she's very popular in her district. She's a national figure. She's a big fundraiser. I think her seat is probably safe. If she were to seek re-election, she would most likely win. The timing was interesting. She is now in an open and very public and very severe feud with the president, and this is concerning the Epstein files, among other things. Marjorie, over the past several months, has broken with the president on a few issues, on his attack against Iran, on the H-1B visas and other statements about immigration, on the government shutdown, and most recently on the release of the Epstein files. And of course, what happened last week is that this feud went hot. Trump called out Marjorie directly on Truth Social, viciously, wrote like 3 paragraphs about her, ripping her to shreds. He officially unendorsed her, withdrew his support, and said that he would actually endorse a primary candidate against Marjorie in her next election in her district. So they're in open war now. What happened days after that is that Marjorie got the better of Trump, because she, with Lauren Boebert, Nancy Mace, and Thomas Massie, worked with the Democrats on a discharge petition to force the House to vote on the Epstein file bill. It passed almost unanimously in the House. It passed unanimously in the Senate, and it's headed to the president's desk for a signature. And it was just days after this that Marjorie resigns. And so naturally, everybody started to speculate, are these things related? And I'm sure they were. Of course they were. People said maybe she's not confident she could win re-election if Trump is pushing a primary challenger. People said maybe she wants to run for president and she doesn't want to get bruised up in a really contentious primary where they're going to run attack ads and they're going to go looking for skeletons in her closet and things like that. I said it's probably more likely that she backed off because she was threatened. Maybe she got death threats. Maybe she got blackmailed. Who knows? But clearly the timing was relevant there. Trump attacks her on a Sunday. The bill passes on a Tuesday. She resigns on a Friday. Boom, boom, boom. Obviously, these things are connected. And a lot of people were very optimistic about it, though. They said, well, she's just going to run for president. They said she's seeking higher office. She's going to run for president. Her odds in Polymarket just went up to 6%. She's now in third place, a distant third. And I said last week, that really doesn't make any sense because if you're going to run for president in a presidential primary, you want to do it as a sitting office holder. You want to run as the congresswoman, not the former congresswoman. And if you want to get people excited about a presidential run, then you want your donors to be enthusiastic. You want them to be committed. You don't want to pull out a year before it's just about a year before the primary would begin. It doesn't really send the right message. So she does all this, and then she comes out a couple of days later and she says, I am not running for president at all. She addresses that rumor and says, nope, I'm not running for president. And she releases this really stinking statement. This was a few days ago. She comes out with a statement and she says, contrary to this rumor being peddled by Time magazine, I'm not running for president. And she launches into this really ugly rant where she says, why would I run for president? You can't change anything. The system's rigged. She had a really shitty paragraph in there. She goes, why would I go around the country begging for money, sacrificing my health and having no social life, only to arrive in Washington and not be able to change anything? That's an actual quote from her tweet. She says, why would I go around begging people for money, ruining my health, and not having a personal life? A personal life? You're a congresswoman. What do you mean your personal life? You don't want to run for president and save the country because then you couldn't check out hot new restaurants in Arlington, Virginia? What are you talking about? You're not going to have a personal life? You're a representative in the United States Congress. You're going to sacrifice your health? What does that mean? You're not going to get your 8 hours? So this is my problem with a lot of these people. They're really just not in it to win it. That's what that tells us. If somebody even thinks that in their mind, let alone says it out loud in public, what does that tell you about who that person is? This is a person that goes to rallies and goes to political events and goes to Congress, and she's a crusader, a fighter, a revolutionary. We're fighting for women. We're fighting for America. And then she writes a statement like that, this pissy, bitter, resentful statement where she says, why would I run for president? You can't change anything, and I'm going to sacrifice my personal life. Your personal life? How could you even think that? How could you even think that in your head? I don't have a personal life, and I'm a live streamer. I haven't had a personal life for 10 years, since I was 18 years old in college, and I'm a live streamer because that's the program. When you're in politics, and moreover, when you're in dissident politics, when you're a revolutionary, no, you don't get a personal life at all. You're lucky if you get a family. And even if you do, you don't get to see them all the time. You are committed to the nation. You are committed to the cause. You sort of give yourself to the cause. You, in a way, almost lose your humanity. You identify with the cause. You become the cause. That's what is entailed in all of that. Otherwise, you shouldn't be in politics. Because then you either become a grifter, and you're not really there to make change. You're not really there to shake things up. It's another job. You're getting paid. You do a job. You're told what to do. It's like a job. Or you're enforcer of the status quo, in which case you're like a security guard. You're like a police officer. There's not really a ton of risk involved in that. You're in an oversight capacity. You're kind of keeping things, you're keeping an eye on things, drinking your coffee, hanging out. If you are a revolutionary, if you're fighting for America, it's a full-time job. That is a full-time around the clock. There is no, the grind does not stop. She goes, I'm not going to have a personal life. Like I said, to think that in your mind, what about my diet? What about my social life? Then to say that without any conscientiousness of how that comes across or how that sounds, that really shows you what kind of person she is. I'm not going to have a social life. Seriously? Grow up. What are you, 50? You got grown kids. You're in your second marriage or whatever that is. You're 50. You're in Congress. You're a trust fund kid. Your personal life? Grow up. This is what she says. This was a few days ago. So for all those people that thought she was running for president, no, she's not, because it's too hard. And what about her health and her social life? And you can't change anything. Why bother, she says. Today, she comes out with a new statement. Get a load of this. So Mike Cernovich replies to her on Twitter, and he says, I'm going to read it exactly. He says, you need to serve out your full term. You need to serve out your full term. That's it. And by the way, I agree with that. You run for office, you need to serve out your term. Unless you're dying, unless there is some debilitating scandal that makes it impossible for you to continue your work, you really need to finish what you started. You don't need to run forever. You don't need to be a career politician, but you need to finish what you started. And by the way, for the House, it's only 2 years. That's not even a long time. President's 4, Senate is 6, Supreme Court is for life. 2 years? You can't do 2 years? She's only been there since 2020. She's been in there for 5. You can do it for another year. She replies to Mike Cernovich's tweet. I'm going to read it for you. This is what she says. So Cerno says, you need to serve out your full term. This is her reply. She quote tweets and says, oh, I haven't suffered enough for you while you post all day behind a screen? Do I have to stay until I'm assassinated like our friend Charlie Kirk? Will that be good enough for you then? Shit posting on the internet all day isn't fighting. Get off your ass and run for Congress. I fought harder than anyone in the real arena, not social media. Put down your little pebbles and put your money where your mouth is. Really? So what's the pitch with a person like this? Vote for me. I'm going to run for office. I'm going to be in Congress. I'm going to fight for Trump. I'm going to fight for America first. Oh, it got a little bit hard. Well, why don't you do it? What is this attitude? What is this? Where is this coming from? Then she doubles down. She quote tweets that. It gets better. She quote tweets her first tweet from her other account, her official congressional account, and then it gets so much better. She writes, typical of Republican men telling a woman to shut up, get back in the kitchen, and fix me something to eat. Is that what he said? Is that what he was saying? You're quitting. You ran for Congress. You said you would fix things, and now you're quitting a year in for no good reason because it got hard. Somebody says, hey, you should really finish what you started. And now she says, you're telling a woman to get back in the kitchen and fix me dinner? What? Is that what he said? What are you talking about? What is that? And where is that coming from now? What, do you hate men now? Typical of Republican men. Are you kidding? It would be bad enough if she said typical of men. Typical of Republican men? Hey, bitch, you're a Republican. Who do you think voted for you? What are you talking about? Typical of Republican men. You're a Republican. You have ran as a Republican and won as a Republican in 2020, 2022, 2024. Who do you think voted for you? That's who you're attacking? You're going to generalize all Republican men? Typical of Republican men to be what? Traditional? First of all, he didn't even say that. He said the opposite. He said, okay, you want to run for Congress and be a politician? Be a politician then. Finish your term. She says it's sexist. We're telling her to get in the kitchen. How does that even? It's literally the opposite. Wouldn't it be a typical chauvinist to say you should resign and get in the kitchen? Not you shouldn't resign, you need to stay in Congress and finish your job? So what is typical then? For us to tell you not to quit? For us to tell you to finish what you started, fulfill your obligations and your responsibilities? So what, we can't tell women what to do? Better yet, we can't tell our congresswomen what to do. A congresswoman is under no obligation to finish her term if she doesn't want to. And if you expect her to, you're a typical sexist pig. That's just like, that is like a delusional, hateful, sick thing to say. This is a person that's not right in the head. For a politician to say that, messed up. And you know what I'm getting? You know what I'm really detecting there? It could be that she's resentful of Trump. You know, Trump really did rug pull her. He really betrayed her. Maybe she's mad at him. She's taking it out on other Republican men. But you know what that sounds like to me? She went on The View and got a warm reception from Whoopi Goldberg and from the women of The View, a very liberal show. And when she started talking about the Epstein files, a lot of liberals that hated her guts a few years ago started to say, why am I agreeing with Marjorie? Why am I agreeing with Marjorie? She seems okay. And you almost have to wonder if Marjorie is looking around and at her new friends and thinking to herself, what am I doing wasting my time being a Republican in Congress? I've been attacked and ridiculed and mocked as a loony hillbilly, as a loony, knuckle-dragging hillbilly Republican for the last 5 years. Why am I doing this? Just to be attacked by Trump? Just, you know, for things to, bad things to happen to me? So that almost sounds like there is like a feminist trying to break out here. This is like a serious girl boss syndrome. This is like a girl boss, and really like a liberal contagion. She went on The View and said, oh, I like this. I'm on The View. These women, these liberal women, all conservative women want to be famous. They want to be liberal women, but the liberal women hate them. So they reluctantly have to push the screws, turn the screws on the liberal women. She goes on the show and says, oh, I like how this feels. They're agreeing with me. On The View, this is such a big talk. They all want to be Oprah. They all want to do daytime TV. Now her problem is with Republican men, sexism. Get back in the kitchen, she says. Really? What a joke. She goes on. So she says, typical of Republican men telling a woman to shut up, get back in the kitchen, fix me something to eat. Imagine that you're a Christian, you're a conservative. Imagine the audacity of a man to tell his wife, make me dinner. I know. Women should not be expected to do anything. They should not be expected to make dinner, or they should not be expected to finish their term in Congress. Like, yeah, there's no expectations. She goes on, she says, fuck you in the sweetest, most southern drawl I can enunciate. Oh, women love to do it. They love to do that. She goes on, I have been trying to tell all you men that are, love it. I have been trying to tell all you men that our kitchen pantry is empty with spider webs. Our house has been ransacked. The windows and doors are broken and busted, and the greedy rich bastards have twisted your minds into a sick state that you all continue in the two-party toxic political system that acts like college football playoffs, yet is burying you and your children and their children and their children in a pine box in a shallow grave. Get off your ass and fix your own damn food and clean up the kitchen when you're done. And then everyone clapped. And then all of the indignant women of America got up and clapped. They don't even know what they're clapping for. It's a totally inane, idiotic rant that doesn't make any sense. You're a congresswoman, retard. You're telling us about the bastards in power and the wars? Hey, retard, you're in Congress. Do something about it. Nobody made you run. You raised millions of dollars. You got famous. You have millions of followers on social media. You are loaded. You're a trust fund girl. You inherited millions of dollars. You inherited a construction company. And then you asked everybody to vote for you because you would represent us and fix it. And now that people are asking you respectfully to finish out your term, you turn it around and say, what about the corruption? I don't know. You tell me. You ran for office. You raised the money. You got rich. What's your net worth now? What was it 5 years ago? Now you're going to come and tell us after you collect your pension? Oh, now we got to, and if we don't, what, we're sexist pigs? Get off your ass. What, if we expect you to do your job? I don't know how you come back from something like this. I see this statement, I say goodbye. Good riddance, you stupid. And honestly, I'm obviously, I have a feud with Marjorie. I don't like her. I think she's dishonest. I think she's a sellout. I think she's a piece of shit. I think that she is so caught up in the glamour, the outfits, the black cars, the life, the view. This is what she's about, obviously. She's a complete degenerate. She had her husband, cheated on her husband with some bodybuilder. Then she gets some new guy. She's got kids. She's in Congress LARPing as some kind of truth teller. Then she sells out to Kevin McCarthy. She doesn't know what she's doing. So I've had a problem with her for many years. I never thought she was that intelligent. I don't think her heart's in the right place. I don't think she belongs there. And so I'm enjoying it partially because she's just showing us who she really is. She doesn't have the guts. She doesn't have the spirit for this. 5 years, that's really nothing. And a lot of people have had a much harder go at it than her. I mean, this is just disrespectful to everybody that's actually put in the work, maybe including and especially Donald Trump himself. Say whatever you want about Trump, whatever you want. And I've said a lot about him, and I have my criticisms, and I'm firmly in opposition at this point. That being said, this man has been fighting a battle for 10 years. And look at what he's been up against. Look at the personal treachery. He gets accused of rape. The disgusting smears against him. They say that he's giving golden showers on Obama's bed. Stormy Daniels are talking about the shape of his penis. They're attacking his family. They're attacking his daughter. They're attacking his son, his wife. Probably destroyed his marriage. That's what it looks like. Destroyed his marriage. Attacked his reputation, his family, his business. Then, the way they undermine him relentlessly, his crowd sizes, his appearance, his mental faculties, every time he flubs a sentence or a word, every time he trips. The impeachments, the federal charges, the charges in New York and Georgia, they tried to put this guy in jail for the rest of his life. Then they shot him. Then they fucking shot him in the fucking head. And he still fought through and became the president again. In good times and bad times, when it felt inevitable, when it felt hopeless. And again, I believe that Trump, in a similar way, has sold out to the establishment. He's made compromises, but there's something to be said in spite of that about the personal aspect. There are personal virtues embodied there, the perseverance, the stick-to-itiveness, the courage. That's admirable, actually, to be at the arena at the highest level, to take the blows and the punches and really to ride the wave. Like I said, whatever it throws at you in calm waters and in the storm, that's Trump. So for this person then to go on Twitter and talk about boo-hoo, Charlie Kirk, and what about me, and it's so frustrating. Are you kidding me? I think about guys like Jared Taylor. And I don't know that me and Jared are each other's biggest fans lately, but I'll always admire him because this is a guy that for 35 years, since 1992, and I don't say this to glaze him. We have some pretty severe disagreements right now, I guess. But this is a guy that has been meeting in small venues for 35 years, pushing the same message to a small crowd in the hopes that someday someone will hear the message. And this guy, he started when he was an adult. He's only gotten older. this is not a backhanded compliment, by the way, but this is to say, he never made millions of dollars. He never became a national figure. He never became famous or got to sit in Congress or got to be on the news or got that kind of a platform. He never had a platform of 1 million followers. And yet he wakes up and he carries a gun when he goes to take the trash out because Antifa wants to kill this guy. And probably that impacted his personal life, family. So I think of guys like this. I think about even guys like Andrew Anglin. I hate Andrew Anglin at this point. I think he's a jealous little sucker. But him too, very gifted, very brilliant, probably one of these unrecognized geniuses. That's why he's so resentful. But he's another one. He can't even live in America, allegedly. And so I think about all the people I've known over the years. I'm not even going to insinuate myself, but I think about all the people I've known over the years, even people I don't like, even people I don't agree with, even people that hate my guts. And I say, how dare you? You go on Twitter, you've been in it for 5 years, you're rich, you've gotten rich off of this, you're famous, you got famous off of this, you're a national figure, you have a platform, you have the ability to make change, and the going gets a little tough. You haven't even been at it for that long. And you go on Twitter and start, oh, we can't fix anything. You run for Congress. What do you want me to get shot? And and then you go and turn the blame around on the people that voted for you, Republican men. That's who voted for you, dumbass. Who do you think is your staff? It's Republican men. Who's Isaac? That's a Republican man. Your staff is Republican men. Your voters are Republican men. Your colleagues, your donors are Republican men. You turn around and you spit on them because it got hard. You're blaming them. Blame yourself. You should have never gotten involved in this. You don't have what it takes. You are a loser. Disgusting. And on a personal level, I'm disgusted. We could have our political disagreements. People disagree about strategy, about ideology, and it happens. But this is such a lack of character. But you know what? You can't even really hold it against her because this is the farce of women in politics. You can't even blame her. It's like getting mad at your dog because he's not going to put on clothes every day. It's not in their nature. We're going to get mad at Marjorie Greene. Why? Because she's not a leader, because she's not decisive, because she doesn't have gumption, she doesn't have guts, she doesn't have balls. Well, she's a woman. Of course she doesn't have balls. She's not strong. And women like to say women are the strongest. Okay, yeah, in certain respects, but not like this. Not in this situation. Women are not made to get shot. Women are not made to go and get thrown into battle and have bullets whizzing past their head, which is what you're kind of in for in politics. It happened to me. You didn't see me crying. A guy came to my front door with a gun. I kept doing the show. I came back a few weeks later. Hey, guys, I think I did a Christmas show the following week. I said, hey, guys, yeah, someone tried to kill me. Pretty fucked up. You move on. That's what it is. But this is the folly and the farce of women in politics. What it takes in politics is vision, leadership, long-term planning, abstract thinking, all these things that emotional control, discipline, always that women just lack. And people don't like to hear it that way because they like to say, well, I know a woman that's pretty strong. My wife is strong. My wife birthed 6 children. That's strength. Okay, but that's not running in Congress. That's a completely different thing. And so on some level, you just have to look at her in some ways as a victim. And we as the men have to ask ourselves, are we going to keep subjecting ourselves to this? Are we going to keep empowering these overgrown children to be in politics? She's going to be in Congress and we're going to tell ourselves that, this is really progressive. And, this is a feminist idea that we're going to have a woman in Congress. It's going to be telling everybody what to do and have an all-male staff. And she's going to run for president. Don't make me laugh. Women should never be the president. The governor? Give me a break. But, this is where we are. This is where we are with our girl dads and wife guys in Congress. This is where you got Tucker Carlson motherfucking me on the show. Why are you attacking Marjorie? Happy wife, happy life. Listen, girl dad. Listen, girl, dad, wife, guy, boomer, whatever your name is. This is why we don't have women in politics, because when the going gets tough, it's not a movie. It ain't a movie. This is not the Avengers. This is not a Disney movie about a badass chick that learned karate and is kicking dudes in the head. This is not, this is not a Hollywood movie where the female mayor slams her fist on the desk and fights corruption and leads the nation away from cynicism and racism and hatred. This is not the Batman. Okay, this is real life. That does not exist. That is a character in a movie that you have seen. It is not real. That does not happen. Take a look around the world. Where do you see that? Putin, Zelensky, Macron, Trump. It's guys. It's dudes. So it's our fault that we enable this and we empower this. She should not be in Congress. And I'm not saying this because I hate women. I don't hate women. I'm not saying this because I believe women can't do anything, but this is not the domain of women. Politics is like war. It is an extension of war. Who do you think the politicians used to be? Generals, warlords, fighters. And what defines the sovereign? It's the ability to take life. It's the ability to command your subjects to kill and be killed for the sake of the realm. That's what it means to be a sovereign. That's what it means to be the president. The president is the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. And so if you're going to tell people to kill and be killed on your behalf as a leader of the country, you have to actually need to be a soldier or eligible to be a soldier at one point in your life. And we all know why women can't be soldiers. They're not physically strong. They have their period. It makes them not able to go and extended missions and fight battles. And people might say, well, you're skinny, you're a weakling. Okay, but if necessary, any man would do what it takes to survive. That's what a man has to do. And that's what you do in politics. That's what you do as a leader of a country. That's what you do as a lawmaker. And so the idea that we would entertain that, it's our fault. She goes and says Republican men. And by the way, you know what's so funny? Here's the delicious irony in all of it. It was Republican men that voted for her. Republican men that gave her money to run. Her dad is a Republican man that gave her her trust fund. Republican men that solve all the problems in her office, her legislative director, comms director. These are Republican men. And what's funny is all these Republican men said, we're going to support this woman. I don't care if a woman is going to be my boss. I'm going to vote for a woman. I'm going to work for a woman. I'm going to give money for a woman to run for office. And they all saw nothing wrong with that. They all thought that was a great idea. They all said, I don't care. This is fine. This is really a feminist idea. It's kind of anachronistic. Like, this should not exist if you're actually patriarchal. And what does she do? Does she reward those progressive, simpy Republican men that supported her? No. Does she look at the Republican men that believe in her enough, they want her to finish her term? No. She blames the man. She blames the men that put her in a position of responsibility. You put a woman in charge as a man, she fails, crashes out, cries, turns around and blames the man that put her in the position of responsibility. Do the men get a head pat? Do the men get a thank you, gratitude? Do they get rewarded? Are they noble for being so progressive? No, they're fucking stupid. And that is why they are now being disavowed. That is why Marjorie is now turning on all the Republican men that supported her and saying, typical Republican man, you should just run for Congress. Isn't that why they're all working for you, voting for you, donating to you so that you could do it, you fucking idiot? Of course not. But this is what women do. No accountability. And it shouldn't be that way. They shouldn't be accountable. They shouldn't be really accountable. They should be accountable for one thing, and that is what they do with their bodies, and that's it. Because the rest, it doesn't matter. They should be accountable for the decision to hook up with men with no intention of bringing children into the world, or hooking up with horrible men and bringing future criminals into the world. That's what they should be held accountable for, because that is their obligation. Their obligation is to select the future of the species, and that's it, and it stops there. And then they're the homemakers. They raise the children, so they make up the home, they feed the children. Yeah, this is what they do. So, they're not accountable. They'll never be accountable, and they shouldn't be. They're accountable for one thing, and that is sex. Period. End of story. It's how it should be. Now you know why. QED. End of discussion. So I saw that. I said, wow, amazing. Amazing. It's really amazing. Because I had my beef with her. And like I said, I've had people kind of on my ass about this. Tucker said, why do you attack Marjorie? She's a sincere fighter, bro. She's a woman. Did you forget? Or what are you? Are you a woman too? Or you're an enabler? You're a wife guy? You're a girl dad? I mean, really, Milo was working for her. Milo, and it's so funny. Milo Yiannopoulos, the Jewish pedophile, worked for Marjorie Greene, and they were like this, and it's so typical. It's all these disgustingly attention-hungry and power-hungry women, and they get together with the like moth to a flame. Like, it doesn't matter how Republican, how conservative. Ann Coulter, hag. Ann Coulter and Ryan Girdusky, moth to a flame. Marjorie Greene and Milo, moth to a flame. Candace Owens and Milo, moth to a flame. Doesn't matter how based, how Catholic, whatever. It's these power-hungry women, typically whores, and the hags and the. And so Milo is so far up Marjorie's ass, and Milo is supposed to be based. He's supposed to be based, tradcath, blah, blah, blah. Tucker's supposed to be based, whatever, have more kids than you can afford, this and that. And they're both glazing this woman politician. Girl power, they say. Girl power. Girl power, Candace. Girl power, Marjorie. And am I the only one over here that's saying, like, no, less of this? Candace Owens, be with your kids. Your kids want your attention. Like, could you imagine Candace Owens' kids, what they're thinking right now? Mommy is over there in the office, and, like, the wallpaper's been ripped off the walls. It's just yarn everywhere, pinned up to the wall. Pictures of trannies, pictures of Brigitte Macron's penis, pictures of Emmanuel Macron, pictures of the Sanford prison experiment. Could you imagine, like, the empty bottles of wine? Could you imagine for a moment? The printer paper everywhere. Could you imagine things pinned up all over the wall? Eventually, she's probably just smearing the wall with paint or blood or something, scrawling things on the wall. Brigitte Macron did this. Brigitte Macron, I'm Brigitte Macron. Like, she's writing it in crayon or marker on the walls. Brigitte Macron killed everybody. Brigitte Macron started a war in Iran. And could you imagine what the kids are like? Mommy, I'm hungry. The kids are knocking on the door. Mommy, why are you yelling? Why are you screaming? Is everything okay? It's like, dude, this is abuse. This is wife abuse. I am going to turn out to be the #1 crusader for women's health and women's well-being, because what these men are doing to these women is abuse. Putting your wife in Congress is abuse. She's gonna, bad things are gonna happen to her. This is abuse. She can't handle it. Putting your wife on YouTube with 1 million followers and saying, hey, go nuts. Dude, her husband should be put in jail. Could you imagine if this was your wife going live every day, bobbing her head and saying, yeah, so then I told the president of France, I know you were an MK Ultra victim, and what is he? He's leaning up against the wall with his arms folded, like, that's why I married this woman. You go get him, Candace. You tell the Illuminist, Frankist conspiracy what's up. God help us. God correct these people. What is this? What are we doing to our wives? What are we doing to our families? Candace is going live every day, bobbing her head, deputizing her followers. God knows that's going to end well. We're the intelligence agency. Everyone was wearing maroon. They're wearing maroon. The yellow plane went this way. The blue plane went that way. And everyone was wearing maroon. And they all have a bee keychain on their backpacks. And the husband's got to be sitting there. What is your obligation to this person? At a certain point, don't you have an obligation to intervene here? So, I don't know what we're doing with these people. But the point is, yet again, Tucker and all these other people, they want to cast me as and look, I don't tell people to follow my lead. You should be getting married. You should be doing the things you do. I'm eccentric. I'm a genius. I'm married to the mission. But they're all trying to paint me as like, oh, he's this like, dysfunctional male. He has this hatred of women and, real conservatives. No, they're wife guys. Real conservatives say happy wife, happy life. They bow down. And it's like, I'm right. These people that are telling us it's okay to have women in politics are just wrong. And this is the evidence. Like, they crack up. They can't handle it. This is the issue. Case in point, emotional crash out. Charlie Kirk got shot and all these bitches went insane. Like, that's really just what it is. All these bitches went crazy. And look, I don't blame them. Like, honestly, Candace Owens would be much happier if she were just a mom. I think we would honestly get along. But she's trying to play dress up. And same with Marjorie Greene. Marjorie would be the sweetest. Maybe she'd be sweet and nice. Maybe she's got something in her, that makes her this way. But they'd probably be much happier if their husbands were tougher. But this is how it goes every single time. So anyway, that's Marjorie Greene. She goes on Twitter. She says, yeah, typical Republican man. Oh my gosh. You scratch a conservative woman, you get a feminist. I don't care how Republican, how conservative, how base they are. You scratch any Republican woman, you get a feminist. You get a raging feminist. That's exactly what this is. How could she write such a thing? She says, get off your ass and fix your own damn dinner and clean up the kitchen when you're done. Like, we're not married, idiot. What do you, are you mad at your boyfriend right now? What are you talking about? Fix your own dinner. If that's not resentment, I don't even know what is. Fix your own damn dinner. And people said I was ridiculous for telling Candace to make me a sandwich. These bitches write a book called Make Me a Sandwich. You tell them, hey, make me some dinner, and they crash out. Totally insane. Anyway, so that's Marjorie Greene. Love the statement, and it's truly a gift. Like I said, because I look like a jerk when I talk about this stuff, but then a woman makes an example like this, and you say, okay, there it is. And there it is. That just goes to show. And people say, no, you got to find the right woman. Dude, she was the right woman for some dude at some point. She was conservative, family-oriented, whatever. They're all like this. They're all like this. It's just a question of how much you can suppress it. They're all like this. It's just a question of how much can you suppress this instinct that women have to go out and pretend to be men. Because on some level, they're very manipulatable, and the society is promoting this, and women get these ideas in their head, and they want to go and be a politician. They want to go and be a YouTuber. They want to go and do these things, and it's your job to tell them no. It's society's job to say no. It's a different domain. This is a domain for men. This is why. So anyway, that's that. I do want to move on. I want to get into the National Guard shooting. I know we should probably talk about the bigger news tonight, which is the shooting. And our featured story, I'm sure you've heard about it. There was a terrorist attack in Washington, D.C. An Afghan national targeted, ambushed, and shot 2 National Guardsmen about a mile away from the White House. He was identified as a 29-year-old, basically an Afghan refugee. They claim he shouted Allahu Akbar when he did the shooting. And this is a story from the New York Times. It says, quote, the suspect accused of critically wounding 2 National Guard members in a shooting near the White House entered the country in 2021 through a refugee program for people fleeing from Afghanistan. Local officials said the suspect, who was injured after opening fire in a busy tourist area, appeared to have acted alone, targeting members of the West Virginia National Guard. The suspect was identified as Ramanullah Lakanwal, age 29. He came to the United States through a program known as Operation Allies Welcome, which provided entry to Afghan nationals fleeing the Taliban takeover of their country after the withdrawal of U.S. troops under President Joe Biden. President Trump in Florida on Wednesday said on social media that the gunman would pay a very steep price. He also ordered a deployment of 500 additional troops to Washington to supplement the more than 2,000 already on the ground. Also said we need to review everybody that's here on a visa, if that's worth anything. Now, about this story, it's like I said at the top of the show. So this 29-year-old Afghan shoots two National Guardsmen. And people are going to read the name, which is Ramanullah Lakanwal, and they're going to hear the national origin, Afghanistan. They're going to hear about how he arrived here, ostensibly as a refugee, ostensibly, apparently. And everyone's going to draw some conclusions about who this guy is. They're going to say this is a fanatical Muslim from a Muslim country that we went to war with. We went to war, we bombed them, we engendered hatred, then we brought them here. They hate us, and now they're killing us. He was motivated by his radical, fanatical religion, ideology. He shouted Allahu Akbar, killed Americans, and what we see is what we get. And that's one way to look at it. Maybe that's the case, because all that is true. He is effectively a refugee from Afghanistan, probably is a fanatical Muslim, or could be. Could be. It's plausible. He shot these Americans. They claim he yelled Allahu Akbar. So maybe he hates America. Maybe he hates what America is doing with Israel and Gaza. Maybe he hates what America did in Afghanistan. Who knows? Maybe it's PTSD. Maybe he, because he was a fighter or was involved with American forces in some way, maybe it's like PTSD. Who knows? But we have to understand exactly what this is. And a lot of people don't know that when the United States conducted its operation in Afghanistan over the last 20 years, we recruited support from the locals, the local tribes, militias, soldiers. We recruited the locals to help in many different capacities as we were fighting the conflict, as security forces, military forces, as translators, in a number of different roles. And this is why he was brought to America under the program. It's called Allies Welcome. Why is it called Allies Welcome? Because these are not just any refugees. These are not women and children. These are not fleeing refugees, not strictly speaking. Allies Welcome. These are collaborators. These are collaborationists. These are not Afghans that were with the Taliban or ISIS-K. These are Afghans who were working with the United States military and special forces and probably working with them for many years and living with them and working with them and ostensibly supporting the goals of the American occupation. That's how we got here. Allies Welcome. In 2021, when the Taliban retook control over the country, of course, everybody that was collaborating with the United States is going to be killed. The United States is fighting the Taliban for 20 years. We took power from them. We controlled Afghanistan. When we left, the Taliban filled the void. And actually, we beat a retreat. We were being defeated by the Taliban effectively. The Taliban was taking over anyway. We could not maintain control of the country from a distance or indefinitely. And so everybody working with the United States was going to be probably captured and imprisoned or killed by the Taliban. So we brought all of our collaborators back to the United States because we owe them. We owe these people. Like we owe the Israelis, like we owe the Kurds, like we owe the Ukrainians. We owe these people in Afghanistan, so they say. So we bring this guy over under Operation Allies Welcome. And again, is this guy a fanatical Muslim? It would seem not, on the basis of how he came here. He didn't come here as a refugee. He came here basically as a U.S. mercenary. Big difference. He didn't come here as a refugee fleeing persecution and violence, although in a sense he was. He was fleeing persecution and violence because he was a U.S. government employee. That's why he was being persecuted. That's why he was fleeing. So he's really a U.S. government employee who was extracted from Afghanistan. He would continue living in Afghanistan if a friendly government remained. If we remained, he would still be there. He was extracted from Afghanistan by his patron that he was a client for, by his boss, the United States. That's how he came here. Not an ordinary refugee, not part of mass migration or anything like that. And so this changes how we look at the attack. Was this guy some Muslim extremist? Well, it would seem that would be unlikely because there are many Muslim extremists in Afghanistan. You've got ISIS-K, the Khorasan group. You've got the Taliban. You got the Pakistani and the Afghan Taliban. You've got Balochistan and the separatists over there. You've got a lot of sectarian violence. You've got a lot of ethnic, tribal, religious violence in this region. Afghanistan is really not a real country. It's a hodgepodge of a bunch of different tribes and ethnicities. You've got Turks, you've got Pashtun, you've got a lot of different kinds of people living there. And so it would seem that if this guy was working with the United States, probably he was not a fanatic. Probably he was not a radical Muslim, a Taliban supporter, an ISIS supporter, because he would have been working with the enemy of those groups. He's a U.S. mercenary. So who is this guy really? The family says they're surprised because they said he loved the United States. So is this a Muslim refugee that killed Americans for Islamism? Or is this a former U.S. service member who went off for some reason? And it raises some questions. Understanding this, you might wonder, so this is not, Ramanullah, the Taliban member. This is Ramanullah, the government employee. What did they do to this guy? Who is this guy? It begs the question, did they put him up to this? If he was being handled by the U.S. military, what is their responsibility in all this? Because you do hear about false flags and you do hear about these kinds of things. And right now, it is true that there's a lot of chaos and violence in the Middle East. It's also true that Israel and the United States have far-reaching geopolitical ambitions there. Israel wants territory in a number of countries. They want Gaza and the West Bank to be absorbed. They want South Lebanon. They want South Syria. They want regime change in Iran. They want operations in Yemen and Syria and Iraq. And the United States wants its air base in Bagram back. That's what the Trump administration said. They said if he were president, we wouldn't have even fully left Afghanistan. We would have kept the base at Bagram. Why? Why is it important for the United States to have a military base in Afghanistan? Does anybody know? A lot of people don't look at a map. A lot of people don't know their geography, and that's the problem. The reason the United States wants a military base in Afghanistan is because Afghanistan shares a border with China. That's why. And specifically, Afghanistan borders East Turkestan, which is where all those troublesome Uyghur Muslims are from. And so if you wanted to spy on China, if you wanted a foothold to project power against China in Central Asia, if you wanted to monitor some of the border disputes or things going on, if you wanted to monitor their activities, maybe you wanted to foment chaos in China, form a land bridge, not just with China, but with their most troublesome population, through Afghanistan might be the way to do it. And of course, all the infrastructure of Bagram could just as easily be used against China as much as it is used against Pakistan or Iran or the Taliban or ISIS-K in the region. That's why they want the base back. And so what has happened since 2021 is the Taliban retook control of the country. The United States lost the foothold there. And now Afghanistan is the gateway for Central Asia into the Indian Ocean. And the Taliban stands to gain from critical mineral wealth. They stand to gain from trade routes through Central Asia. And the United States maybe doesn't want the Taliban to have that kind of leverage and discretion, and they don't want the Taliban to control all that territory. So the United States will not recognize the Taliban as the sovereign government of Afghanistan. I wonder if this has something to do with that in some way, shape, or form, because this is not an ordinary Afghan. And I know this. I was in D.C. a few weeks ago. I had an Uber driver. He was Afghan. We got to talking. I said, "Where are you from?" He said, "Afghanistan." I said, "Oh, did you come here after we left?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "Yeah, a lot of us came here." He said, "There's a lot of Afghan here, and they're all Uber drivers." And I asked him about Imran Khan, and I asked him about everything that's going on over there. And he said, that's the program. He said, "We are government contractors. We're in Afghanistan. We were brought over here. We love America, but we have a lot of problems here." And so you almost have to wonder if this is some kind of government operation. Everyone's wondering, is this a false flag? Now, maybe that's far-fetched. I don't think that's the likely explanation, but it's a possible one. And I guess the bigger conversation is about what is happening with the National Guard. I think regardless, maybe that's far-fetched. It's certainly possible that we brought a bunch of people from Afghanistan and one of them is like a Muslim extremist or hates Americans. Certainly possible. Like I'm not going to go four-dimensional chess and say, no, there's no Muslims that kill people ever. That never happens. Like it's possible. And maybe it is far-fetched that he was some MK Ultra guy, it's a false flag guy. But it is worth mentioning he's a U.S. mercenary. So that does make a world of a difference. It's not like he's some random Syrian fighting with al-Qaeda like the current president of Syria. No, he was a U.S. operative. He was on the U.S. payroll, and they brought him here. And they handled him. And you got to wonder what they did to him and who this guy really is, where his loyalties really lie, what that's all about. What's actually the motive there? It's worth pointing out, and it's worth asking the question. But I would say it's bigger than this. You know, I said this earlier in the year. The problem with this administration is when they increase the presence of law enforcement in a symbolic way, they're really playing with fire here. Because what the Trump administration is doing is they're gesturing towards fascism. They're signaling towards fascism, but we don't actually have it. They're creating the appearance of a police state to satisfy the base, but they're not delivering one. And people might say, well, isn't that a good thing? And I would say no. Because you can either not have a police state or you can have a police state, but you can't pretend like you have one and not have one. Why? Because what the Trump administration is doing, they're deploying National Guard allegedly to all these cities. People think that's happening, even though it's really not. They're sending Border Patrol and ICE into all the cities, rounding people up in these very visible raids, very provocative. And they're bragging about it. And again, the numbers are not high. These detention facilities, many of them are empty. The mass deportations are not happening. They're sending like hundreds of personnel to round up a dozen people. Like it's not what they're making it out to be. They're marketing it like it's a restoration of law and order, but we really don't have that. How do we know? Because we keep getting shot. In Trump's first term, we all got censored, we all got banned. In Biden's term, we all got persecuted. We got charged, we got censored from other things, banned from bank accounts, no-fly list, trip Quad S on an airplane. Under Trump, we're all getting shot. He got shot. Charlie Kirk got shot. ICE is getting shot. Guy tried to shoot me. National Guard is getting shot. They're getting shot. And the Trump administration has no ability to respond. When Charlie Kirk got shot, Trump could not even pretend to care. Did anything result from that? No. When Charlie Kirk got shot, they said, we are going to hold these people accountable. Has even one single additional arrest been made except for Tyler Robinson? Has even one? Have they investigated it at all? Have they reported their findings? No. Have Antifa been arrested? Have any far-left agitators, have they been arrested? No. Have the people inciting violence been arrested? No. So you have this gesture, immigration raids, mass deportations, Border Patrol and ICE, National Guard, going after Antifa, but it's not really there. The numbers are nothing. The National Guard deployments just haven't happened, and where they do happen, it's like a few thousand people, nothing. Border Patrol, they're making a gesture, but they're not really deporting anybody. Facilities are empty. It just isn't what they say it is. The crackdown after Charlie Kirk, they've done nothing. Nothing. And so you might say, well, does it hurt? Does it hurt to deport some people, but not many? Does it hurt to deploy some National Guard, but not enough? Yes, it does. It does hurt. And I'll tell you why. Because when you gesture towards that and you talk a big game and say, yeah, we're going after everybody, they are inciting the left. They are daring the left to retaliate. In the minds of the left, they think Trump is a fascist, and Trump says, call me a fascist. Mamdani goes to the White House and Trump says, yeah, call me a fascist. I don't care. He's embracing it. And the left really believes they're in the Third Reich. They think they're in the Fourth Trumpenreich in America, and the Holocaust is happening, and they're fighting back and all this, and they take this shit seriously, and they're getting armed, and they're shooting ICE, and they're shooting it. It has happened several times now. They're shooting at ICE in Chicago. They're shooting at ICE in Texas. They're shooting at ICE in Washington State. Now they're shooting at the National Guard. This happens a lot, and maybe some of it is fake. Certainly, some of it is real. When we look across the board at Luigi Mangione, Thomas Crooks, Tyler Robinson, the tranny school shootings, the shootings at ICE, the shootings at National Guard, we could say maybe some of them are fake, but definitely some are real. And the fake ones are exacerbating the real anger that is really there, the real rage that is there. And it becomes self-perpetuating. And you know that these people are sitting at home watching TV, learning about how the billionaire oligarchs are instituting their fascist police state, and there's never going to be elections, and the military needs to resist Trump, and Trump is a tyrant, and they're doing all this stuff. We got to shut down the government because Trump is destroying the institutions. And you have far left nut jobs that are saying, okay, we're going to go and kill a National Guard. We're going to go and kill ICE. These are Nazis. And if you don't actually have a police state, they're going to get away with it. It's just going to get ugly. Like I said, if you had a real police state, how is it even possible the National Guard is being ambushed like this? How does it even happen? The problem is you don't have enough of them. You got 2,000 guys, and they're, it's lackadaisical. They're doing their patrols or walking around. It's totally unserious. And so somebody pulls up. These people are not afraid. They're not afraid. They're not afraid to go to jail. They're not afraid to die. Same thing happens with ICE. They're following ICE convoys in their cars, honking their horns, yelling, because they're not afraid. So when you step to the enemy, when you step to the left, and you gesture towards fascism, but you're not really bringing it, you're not serious, you're just daring them to retaliate. And if you're not strong, then we're just going to get killed. If you're not going to roll up Antifa, if you're not going to deploy 100,000 National Guard, if you're not going to deport millions of people, then you're just daring them. And they're emboldened and they're not afraid, and they will be out there with guns and everything. And that's what this is. I've been saying it for a long time. Crazy people and the government, they're watching these events carefully, and they see the glorification of the assassins, the shooters, and between the psychedelic drugs, the weed, the chat GPT-induced psychosis, the porn, the internet, the mental illness, the prescription drugs, this cocktail of reality-altering experiences. You have more crazy people than ever. They're all seeing the stuff, and they're all making their plans. They're all scheming. And it's really just a matter of time. This is like you have live mines, like explosive mines everywhere, and we're just waiting to step on them. We're waiting for the next psycho to pop off, waiting for the next nut job to go and arm themselves because John Oliver told them that Trump is a dictator. And we're going to get more of it until and unless the Trump government is going to take it seriously and crack down. I'd support it at this point, but they're not going to do it. So they say they're going to deploy another 500. Okay, big whip. This is the Capitol. This is your law enforcement are being shot next to the White House. And you increase the deployment by 20%, you need to increase it by 5,000%. Obviously. And people are watching. They see National Guard getting shot, and crazy people are saying, wow, that easy? And I'm not trying to give people ideas, but that's what people are thinking. And I said it during the ICE riots at the detention facility here. I said, watch, the next thing that's going to happen, some ICE guy is going to get killed. And then it's going to escalate to a whole different level. The only difference is now they shot 2 National Guard in D.C. Slightly different. But it's not cool. And it just goes to show. Sometimes it's better if your guy loses. It's better to not even bark up that tree. Because look at what Trump is bringing out in the left. We kicked out Biden, who was weak and senile, and the left was going down, and we brought in Trump. And Trump is now killing our side single-handedly, and he's inviting the left to refortify, regroup, and become maybe more vicious than ever because he's not serious. And that's the thing. I would love if he was. I don't like to sit here and hate on Trump all the time. But you know what? That's why people like him, and that's what people wanted, and I would like him if he delivered, but it isn't there, and that's putting all of us in jeopardy. People are looking at this and saying, wow, it's kind of stupid, isn't it? 2 National Guard just got caught with their pants around their ankles and just got shot, and the guy got away. And they arrested him, obviously, but he was able to get it off. This is a very ominous and dark sign, and it's very worrisome, and I don't like where this is going because this is now a part of a bigger pattern. Trump gets shot. Another guy shows up at Mar-a-Lago. Luigi Mangione kills the CEO. Then you get a couple of transgender mass shootings. We had that one in Minneapolis not too long ago. Then you get the Charlie Kirk shooting. You get the attacks on ICE, the attacks on National Guard. This is all part of the same story, by the way. And the government doesn't even seem to have a message on it, let alone a solution. There's no messaging from the White House. The policy sucks. There's no solution. So we're strapped in for 3 more years of this, and I don't like it. It's like, again, what is the Trump government really doing for you if now we're literally being shot by the left? Like, do you realize that Charlie Kirk being shot by whoever shot him, that was a failure of the Trump administration? At the minimum, you expect that when your government is in power, your people don't get shot in the fucking head. And if they do, you're going to burn the whole village down. You know, you're going to burn the whole forest down. You're going to destroy everybody that even thought about it. That should be the benefit of being in power. But Trump gets elected, we start getting shot. How is this good for us? His own loyalists are quitting because they don't want to get shot. It's what it is. So anyway, that's that. We're going to move on. We're going to take a look at our super chats. We'll see what you guys have to say about all this stuff.
All right, let's get right to it. So we're going to focus on 3 areas. 3 areas. Let me check the notes just to make sure we're good. All right, so we're going to focus on this National Guard shooting, Candace Owens a little bit, and Marjorie Taylor Greene. So those are going to be the 3 things that we dive a bit deep into. I'm going to have a couple other notes here where Nick was predicting a drone attack. I'm actually surprised when I think about it that it hasn't already happened, that we have all these drones running around here. We have all these weird things that are flying in the air. A lot of our enemies have bases that are pretty close to us. And of course, there's always that conspiracy thought, right? That conspiracy theory thought, which is, can something be a false flag? Can something, who's actually doing these things? Are these things being done? Or are these things being allowed just to spark the next thing that they want to accomplish, to spark a reason to go to war, to spark a reason to drop a more significant bomb on this country, that country? We've seen this play out in the past. And when it comes to the drone attacks, or let's say the Afghan, shooting 2 National Guards, I think this is the entire point, that we don't know what it is because we don't trust the government. We don't trust the government. And it's actually 2 things. It's a lack of trust, and it's trust from a standpoint of whether you're lying to me or telling me the truth. And it's trust from a competency standpoint. Like, we look at our government as very incompetent and lacks trust. So when you have those 2 things, we don't know what's going on. Anything can happen. Think about it from this standpoint, whether it's Charlie Kirk, whether it's a drone attack, whether it's anything that could potentially happen in the future. We don't know if it's something that our government did, if it's something that our ally did, if it's something that an enemy did. We don't know. We don't know because we have the lack of trust, and then we have the incompetence issue. Look at 9/11, all the things that are coming out there. You got the stories with the dancing Israelis, stories with 9/11 as far as like, hey, were certain people given the tip, like stories where our government was following these people. Tucker Carlson exposed a lot of these things. So we're sitting back wondering, like, can we even trust anything that we hear? Can we trust anything that we hear? Is our government putting the priority of the American people? Are they putting us as the priority, or are they putting their personal interest while they sit at these, elitist levels, and they think that they're smarter than everybody, and they're probably being controlled? If we're being real, they're being controlled. So it's not even them, it's the elitists, the ones that are actually controlling the puppet strings for a lot of these politicians. Do we really, are we that naive to think that they're gonna, just do what's best for America? Or are we thinking that they're doing anything that they can do to gain more power, gain more influence, and accomplish the things that they want to accomplish as the people that have worked hard to gain their power and to control all these things that are going on? Do we really think that any powerful people really want a powerful union? Because that's what it comes down to. America, right? We the people, we're supposed to be the union. And then we got the company, the American government. Do we really think that they want a very strong union? It works well when everything is good, right? But when you're actually holding the employer accountable, when the citizens, when we the people are actually holding the government accountable, holding politicians accountable, do we think that they like that? Or do we think that they dislike that? Do we think that their handlers like that? No, their handlers want to handle them in whatever way they want to handle them, not the way that the people are pushing them to handle and represent themselves as representatives of the people. This is how I look at it. And this is why perhaps we have all of these fights that are promoted. This is why, even looking at the Democrat and Republican Party, I heard Megyn Kelly the other day talking about, we need to get together and fight against the crazy lefts. This is about the crazy lefts. They're killing us. And I'm sitting here like, man, you're too old for this. You're too old to still be stirring the pot with right versus left, Democrat versus Republican. Don't you get it? The younger people are not buying into that. They realize that, hey, the same people that run the Democrats are the same people that run the Republicans. It's Israel, it's Big Pharma, it's Silicon Valley. Why are they getting more out of our politicians by looking at both of them and saying, hey, we'll work with both, compared to us? We get radicalized and we only want to align ourselves with one. And we wonder why nothing ever gets done. We wonder why we can't have a common sense approach to politics. We can't have a common sense approach to policies in general, because we got radicals that are getting promoted, the most radical people on both sides, because they want to create the division and they want the chaos, because within chaos, it makes it a lot easier for the powers and the elites to control us. So whether it's the Afghan, shooting National Guards, we don't know. So really, what can we comment on it? There was a program, I believe Trump jumped out there and said that he's stopping all the Afghans that came in during this program when we were removing ourselves from Afghanistan, the nightmare that was. We don't know. We don't know. We don't know what this is. We don't know if this is some type of MK Ultra. Like Nick said, it may be far-fetched, but would it really be far-fetched? It's only far-fetched if it comes out that it's not that. And how would we even know? When we look at a lot of these things that have happened, and you look at a lot of these people that they're presenting as, whether it's the Butler guy or a lot of these people, doesn't it seem like there's something, obviously, well, people that would do that would be off, but it's almost like they're off in a different way, where they're just like empty. It seems like they just are empty souls, and not necessarily passionate fighters who are fighting for a cause and doing what they believe is right because they want to fight against fascism and Hitler and Nazis. It doesn't seem like that. And obviously, I'm not an expert. I don't know how people who commit these type of acts move around, but there does seem to be some type of emptiness and soullessness when it comes to a lot of these people. That's just me, just my opinion. But who knows if any of this stuff is true? Who knows? Let me ask y'all this. Do we think that the government wouldn't go to whatever lengths that they had to go to in order to accomplish their goals? When we look at it from that perspective, when we answering that question, do you think that the government has some type of moral compass? Do you think that they have a certain level of integrity where they have a line that they wouldn't cross in order to accomplish their goals, especially when they believe that their goals, their personal goals, right, or that's what's good for the country? So they feel like they're pushing for something and they're going to become a hero because they're standing on something ultimately that will do good for the country, no matter how many Americans have to die, no matter how many Palestinians have to die, no matter how many Russians or Ukrainians have to die. These rich, wealthy elitists that will never get their hands dirty, they believe that they're smarter than everybody. They believe that their goals, they've convinced themselves that their goals, their personal goals, what's best for them is what's best for the people. Or they believe that they've just earned the right to do whatever is best for them. That's what we're seeing. So once again, who knows what the truth is? Looking back at a lot of the past situations, whether it's JFK, whether it's MLK, whether it's Malcolm X getting shot, whether it's 9/11, whether it's Charlie Kirk, have we ever uncovered much truth at all? Do they ever present us with the truth, or do we have to uncover it on our own? Perhaps that's the better question. The things that we now know about, even 2020, did they present us with the things that actually made sense for us, or did they present us with what lined their pockets as politicians, as doctors? So I'm just looking at the history, and based on the history, I'm determining my perspective for how I look at a lot of these organizations moving forward, how I look at our country moving forward. So let's move on. I don't want to talk y'all head off too much on that. But then Nick went on to talk about Marjorie Taylor Greene crashing out over someone saying that she should have to finish her term, or she should have finished her term. It really is a crash out. And the reason why I say it's a crash out is because Marjorie Taylor Greene, perhaps she's showing her true colors, but she's representing herself in a way that contradicts what she supposedly stands on. She's supposed to be a conservative woman, right? And this is something that comes up a lot. A lot of these women, they align themselves with certain aspects of conservatism, but they just are the exceptions. And I heard Candace Owens talk about this, where she said, like, my life is exceptional, so you shouldn't judge my life based off of everybody else. Pretty much, she was getting pressured by saying, like, hey, you talk all this conservative stuff, but here you are, a boss chick. You know what I mean? You have your own podcast. You're spending all this time talking to the people rather than spending this time with your kids. Yes, we know that you homeschool your kids. Yes, we know that you try to promote that and push that and let that be known to the world so you can appear to be a more conservative woman. However, I'm glad that she did acknowledge that her life is exceptional. And that's what we find with a lot of these conservative women that are spotlighted. You know, whether it's a Marjorie Taylor Greene or a Candace Owens, we see that they actually live exceptional lives. So therefore, they're pushing conservative values that they don't necessarily live themselves. So whether it's Marjorie Taylor Greene saying, like, typical, this man is telling you to finish out your term, you made a commitment to work and represent the people, to do work, to be outside the house, to be outside the kitchen. But now you're presenting it in a way where you almost resorted back to the liberal woman and the feminist woman. And I would love to see where Marjorie Taylor Greene, you know, what her thoughts were, what her stances were, you know, 10, 15 years ago, maybe even 20 years ago, when this feminist movement was really starting to, you know, the whole Me Too, all these things. I would have loved to hear exactly where she stood on all those things, the believe all women. Y'all remember that? So she responds, and without even thinking, it seems like, because you couldn't have, like, you just completely contradicted yourself and made a hypocritical statement based on, yeah, typical conservative man telling me to get back in the kitchen or stay home or whatever she said. I didn't even look at the actual post. But she's saying this, and he's saying, like, nah, you should finish your job. Like, oh, what do I have to be shot like Charlie Kirk? All this emotional energy to give yourself an excuse as to why you're leaving early, why you're leaving your commitment, why you're walking away from your commitment, while you're quitting your commitment, however you want to look at it. However you want to look at it. There's a few things that I regret in my life. One is not shaking hands and storming off my last high school basketball game against Ridgewood. I felt like that was cowardly. I still think about that. I should have shook those kids' hands, and I gave myself an excuse as to why I didn't in the moment, and perhaps even shortly after that. But it was just wrong. It was cowardly. Like, that was a coward move. A coward move. I would use a B word, but, you know, I don't feel like going back and having to silence it out. But y'all know what I'm saying. And there was another one where I stepped away from my baseball team because I wanted to get ready for football season or basketball season. I was doing something. And yeah, and I just felt like, yeah, that was corny. I should have stayed there. It's been walking away from situations. Neither here nor there. It's not about me. It's about Marjorie Taylor Greene. So let's focus on Marjorie Taylor Greene. I don't know what's going on with her. I don't know whether it's, you know, her just being so offended that Trump turned his back to her or is no longer supporting her, calling her a traitor. I'm sure that the death threats do play a toll. And it seems like, to me, it's like based on the scrutiny and the death threats that I'm sure receives after Trump called her a traitor and she said that she had to pay more for security, she can come up with and muster up enough excuses to do whatever it is that she wants to do. Like, the excuses are there if she wants to use them. And perhaps that's what she is doing. You know, perhaps that's what she is doing, because is there any real way to rationalize walking away from your commitment to your people to serve? can you be trusted moving forward? You walk away from this position. I don't think she has aspiration. Well, who doesn't have aspirations once you get into that position? Once you get into a position where you're talking with Trump and you're a politician and you're around these type of people, you're in these meetings to some degree. I'm sure a lot of us would see ourselves, well, what if this happens? What if that happens? Maybe I could be the president. Would you just walk away from that if it got a little bit too much? If you were worried about, hey, I need to have a personal life. Like, she's just making herself look very bad. She sounds like very liberal, like a liberal woman, feminist in a lot of ways, a confused feminist. So I like Marjorie, and obviously Nick has his issues with him. And when I say I like Marjorie, what I really mean is that I don't have an issue with her, and I like that she stood on business and supported Thomas Massie. Now, a lot of times to us, it's standing on business, but to them, it's just making a political move. So with Thomas Massie, I can confidently say, like, nah, I like that dude. He's standing on business. With Marjorie, I don't know what it is. But she's definitely making herself look bad. This doesn't seem like anything that's going to gain an attraction on either side when she's behaving like this and just completely contradicting herself. I don't know. Maybe she will gain actual following. Maybe that was an ignorant statement, because maybe she actually will gain a following when it comes to a lot of the when she's making these crazy radical statements like, oh, you're a typical conservative man just telling me to get in the kitchen. Maybe she will get recruited over to run with Gavin Newsom, and that'll be the joint party. You have Gavin, super Democrat, and then Marjorie Taylor Greene can squeeze her way in there. Who knows? Who knows? I predicted before that in this next election or the next two elections, there's going to be a ticket made up of Democrat, Republican. And another thing, whenever we talk about the next presidential candidate, isn't it weird how, and I was doing this, that's how I had to call myself out, because I was like, damn, I completely missed that. And I was an RFK guy. The only reason why I voted for Trump is because RFK Jr. dropped out. That's when I started to even entertain anybody else other than RFK. I was an RFK guy. So, and I don't think that I would vote for RFK Jr. if he ran again, just because he just seems to be too controlled by Israel. Yeah, period. Hard stop right there. But a lot of people haven't even been throwing RFK Jr.'s name in there. It's like, here's somebody, this is the first candidate in a very long time as a third party candidate to get the type of push that he was getting, the type of support, and to where you could really influence the election. And we're talking about J.D. Vance, somebody who has never ran, and we're talking about Marco Rubio, who ran, but he didn't have the success of a guy like RFK Jr. So why hasn't RFK Jr. been mentioned? Maybe he's just keeping quiet. Maybe he's not really a Trumper. Maybe Peter Thiel already bullied Trump into rocking with J.D. Vance. Who knows how this is all going to play out? But I just thought that was something funny that I had to catch myself with. Maybe you all had to do the same. All right, so let's finish up with Candace. Well, we actually already talked a bit about Candace, and as far as getting in the kitchen, and I really hope that Candace and Nick figure out whatever they got going on and start working together. I hope that and I don't know what's going to happen with what comes out with Candace, and now she obviously has been she accused Macron and others of trying to assassinate her, of putting the plane, of paying a certain amount, having the deal actually done as far as like, hey, we're paying you to assassinate her. I listened to Patrick Bet-David, and of course, Adam was over there talking about, I don't know if y'all listen to Patrick Bet-David. Well, not even about that, but I've listened to a few different shows where people are questioning it and questioning whether, her intentions, or she may just be making this up. A lot of people are looking at Candace where I think that they're jealous of the success that she's having from a live stream standpoint. I don't think Nick is one of those people, by the way, as far as what I'm talking about is being jealous. I think that maybe he is. I don't think it's a jealousy thing. With a few of these other people like Patrick Bet-David, I think Patrick Bet-David is hating. I think that he's hating. There's a little bit of hate in there where he's looking at Candace and he questions like, well, she's just, spewing propaganda, or she's just treating this like a daytime television show where we're more the news and Candace is promoting something that's gossipy, or I think that they're trying to make Candace out to be that, or make Candace out to be not a serious journalist, and making her out to look like she's doing a witch hunt with Charlie Kirk, and almost like how they try to paint Nick in a particular way where he's the racist, he's the Hitler, he's the misogynist. So therefore all of his views aren't justifiable. But with Candace, they'll try to paint her and oh, she's just a loony, she's gone off the rails. And Nick has done that in the past a bit as well. You know, I think it's some of the topics that Candace chooses to lean into, especially when you're investigating something like, you know, the Macron and Brigitte Macron having a penis and being a man. So I couldn't see that from that standpoint, but Candace is a soldier. Candace is a soldier. And when it comes to a lot of this stuff, I'm glad that she's doing a lot of the things that she's doing, even though her behavior can be a bit contradicting. But she acknowledged that she's an exceptional person, so don't compare her necessarily to the rule or as the rule. When it comes to how she lives her life as a conservative woman, she's a bit different. You know, I'm not opposed to it, especially based on, is there anybody else that's doing the type of deep dive to uncover a lot of these things with Charlie Kirk? If Candace Owens wasn't doing what she's doing, what would this look like? Matter of fact, let's think about that. If Candace Owens wasn't doing what she's doing when it comes to the Charlie Kirk assassination, what would we know? What would be given to us, or what would the situation be? Would anybody even be talking about it to this point? Nick is right. Trump, right after this happened, it seemed like Trump didn't even care. It seemed like, you know, he gets asked a question about Charlie Kirk, how he's dealing with it, and immediately he starts talking about the ballroom. So I don't know if that's just nervous energy because it's Trump. I don't assume that it is. But one thing that keeps, like, these two words keep coming to mind, like, who knows? Who knows? Who knows on all of these situations? Who knows? Maybe this is all just a big, all these people are just working together to create as much chaos, to do a mental experiment on all of us to see how we respond to all this craziness. Who knows? Who knows? But that's pretty much all I got. I told y'all, I said we we're going to focus on Marjorie, Candace, and the National Guard shooting. I don't want to just keep talking and just keep talking. I'll wait till we get a little bit more information on the National Guard shooting. But one thing that I like to always make sure that I'm emphasizing is all this violence, we got to figure out a way to solve our problems and to push for certain policies, whatever it may be. We can't allow violence to escalate, because then we're giving the government almost a green light, a pass, to then put like some of these false flags in place to where we just accept it as, oh, well, that's that group. Of course they're going to respond that way. You know what I mean? It almost gives them, you know, the more these type of things that may happen where, let's say that it actually is somebody who's crashing out, just a American citizen or whoever it may be, an Afghan person that comes in through a program. Think about how easy it was to sell us on going to war with Iraq that had absolutely nothing to do with 9/11, after 9/11, and using 9/11 to justify that. Think about how easy it was because we just believed it. We just bought into it. So the more violence that occurs, you know, now when something happens, we'll be more likely to buy into a more violent response. So violence only begets violence. It's not going to be anything beneficial for us, because when violent situations occur, it's the rich and wealthy that avoid the violence coming to their doorstep in most cases, while it's the most vulnerable of us, right? It's the ones that are in the army, the military, who we're very appreciative that serve. But when I say the most vulnerable, it's usually the elites that are moving the pieces on the chessboard or making the orders, while the peasants are on the field, you know, playing football, or the ones that are actually fighting in the battles. You know, not to call our military peasants, but I'm just talking about as far as the dynamics. You know, they get used by the elites to sacrifice and risk their lives just to accomplish things that the elites are doing for their personal interest, or playing, you know, their having their personal battles, like Bush is trying to do certain things because of what happened with his dad, or all these other instances, people taking personal grievances and turning them into national affairs and foreign affairs and wars that we end up starting. So y'all know I can ramble. I'm gonna end it here. As always, appreciate y'all support, appreciate y'all continuing to tap in, check out the videos, and especially the ones that stick around to hear me give my little bit of insight at the end. So as always, like, subscribe, turn your notifications on, make sure that you're controlling the algorithm, right? We got to control our algorithm, not allowing the algorithm to control us. So, and if you're also feeling real good, leave a comment, thumbs up, thumbs down, whatever. Let us know exactly how we're doing. Maybe provide some context to some areas that I may be missing as well. I have my own bias, as I always say. So therefore, I'm not always able to be as objective as I'd like to be. So y'all hold me accountable. So I rely on y'all when we having these conversations. So on that note, I'll let y'all go. Getting this video out a bit late. I took a break with the holiday yesterday. So hopefully I can get this out to y'all as soon as possible, and enjoy your weekend and enjoy time with family and friends. Give your parents a hug, give your family members some hugs. Understand when we talk about priorities and Americans being prioritized, let's start to prioritize our families, prioritize these moments that we have with them, because the older I get, the more I realize that life is shorter and shorter, and we take for granted a lot of these moments we have with our loved ones that unfortunately we don't realize until they're no longer here, how much that we should have appreciated them and appreciated the moments with them while they are here. So let's lean into that. All positive energy, all hugs, and I'll see y'all on the next one.
It's the black guy in the corner, but they'd rather see a nigga on the corner. They say I'm stealing Nick's clips like I'm stealing Nick's chick, not knowing that I hit him first week for the lick. I said, Nick, I could post here while you post there. Let's run the ads up, then let's meet up over there. Let's figure out a split that's honorable and fair. Tell me where you trying to take it. Bro, I'll meet you there. 1600 Penn, Wash, DC. Swear I saw the vision riding through the DMV. I envision prayers, but I could do VP. Hillbilly, Elegy, fuck, I look like JD. Shout out my cheat code, Dave and Karen raised me. And my big bro, a nuclear family.
And they don't like that. Strong fathers in the crib, BLM for that. LBJ society created all that. Victimhood mentality, I can't embrace that. And everything they taught in school, assume it's all cap. Everything I said I'd be, I am that. Everything I said I'd be, I am that. Everything I said I'd be, I am that. Ain't no introduction, just some fun facts. In case you were wondering, I am that.
I know you heard me hit it 3 times for Dr. Umar. Shout out to Umar, man. We ain't kicking nobody when they down. And shout out to everybody that continues to show love, support, appreciating the message that I'm giving y'all, along with the bro Nick's message. We gonna keep pushing, man. And shout out to the haters too, cause y'all in the comments heavy too. y'all the ones that gave me the inspiration to create this song. They kept saying like, who's the random black guy in the corner? I am.